So welcome to this International Women's Day. It's the second in a series of events that we've been doing at WISH, so Women in Social Housing, around the menopause. We had a fantastic event last month, which was about understanding the menopause, which was attended by over 220 women, which was just a brilliant and inspiring event. And this is the second in the series. And this one is going to focus on how employers, with a focus on housing associations, can become menopause diverse and inclusive employers. So you'll hear from 5 absolutely brilliant speakers over the next hour and a half. And what they'll be describing to you is different and varied approaches to what they've done on their journey towards becoming a diverse employer with regards to the menopause. As with a lot of this sort of stuff, there isn't a one size fits all, there isn't a right and wrong, but what we wanted to do was just share what people are doing and the journeys that they are on to really help people learn and collaborate and network, which is ultimately what WISH is all about. So we'll be hearing from Sharon. She's going to kick us off, Sharon, or aka Miss Menopause. We'll then be hearing from Liz from 13 Group. We'll then be hearing from Lisa Winward, who's the Chief Constable at North Yorkshire Police, and she's also the National Chair of the Menopause Action Group. In housing, it's sometimes quite tempted just to get sucked into the housing bubble and not always lift our heads up and out and look at what other people are doing. So unfortunately, Lisa can't be with us today, but we never let those sort of problems hold us back. So we've done a pre-record of Lisa's presentation, and that will be played to you guys. We'll then hear from Vanessa, who's from Housing 21, and finally Jeanette from Manchester Stress Institute. We really welcome participation. So there's none of this don't chat at the back of the class stuff. We want you to chat using the chat panel. Like I said, this is about networking, it's about collaborating. So the speakers will not be offended if you're popping in comments, putting in thoughts in the chat panel, and exchanging ideas as we go. We really welcome that. We're not expecting any technical problems, so or fire alarms. So if that does happen, that's not planned. And please do just stay calm and rejoin using the Zoom link. We're trying a slightly different thing this time. It's the first time we've done this, but we wanted this to be about sharing and learning, but we also wanted to make it really easy for you guys to go away and take action. So we've pulled together a toolkit. So a lot of what the speakers talk about today, we've pulled together practical guidance, hints and tips, their policies, their documents into one document, which we'll be sharing with you afterwards. So you'll leave this event hopefully feeling super inspired, and you can go away back to your organisations and start your journey on being a menopause diverse employer. So that's all I've got to say for now. I'll be chairing the event. My name's Charlotte Murray, and I'm the chair for WISH in Yorkshire and the Humber. But without any further ado, I will hand over to Sharon, aka Miss Menopause.
So welcome everybody. So I'm going to really talk at a very high level about some facts and figures, some top level things that I think you can do. I've had the fortunate opportunity to work with many organisations around the country over the last 4 years, and great news is many house associations. So why does menopause matter in the workplace? Well, women are going to spend up to a third of their lives in menopause. So you might be thinking, oh my goodness, hope you know, how can that be? Well, the good news is it's because we're living longer. So you might think that's incredibly bad news, but the good news is because we're living much longer. But that means effectively that women could be spending therefore up to a third of their lives in menopause. Now, changes to pensions are also another reason why we're almost hitting a perfect storm. So in 2010, when the government did a full-scale review of everybody's pensionable age, it means that somebody who's my age, currently 54 this year, my pensionable age has gone from what I believe to be 60 to 67. And that trend only set to continue. So for any younger people on this call today, I'm not here to try to sell you a pension, but the pensionable age is only going to do that. And they were talking just before COVID hit that the pensionable age could go back as late as 70, 75. And obviously we've just had a huge overspend. So why does that matter when we're talking about women in the workplace and menopause? It means that many women for the first time in history are going to have to work through this life event known as menopause for the very first time in many cases. And it's estimated that women over 50 are the fastest growing demographic in the workplace. So 100% of reproducing females are going to go through the life event known as menopause, whether they like it or not. So younger women on the call again, coming to a body near you, whether you like it or not, and you don't have a choice. Let me tell you a story, and it's one of the reasons that I set up my Miss Menopause service. So I don't know if we have any mental health first aiders on the call here today. So I did a mental health first aid course over 5 years ago now. And I went along to a 2-whole-day event. It was really comprehensive. I really learned a lot about mental health and well-being, but I also went because I hoped that I'd learned some more information about menopause. And on the last half day, the facilitator said, she said, well, what we're going to learn about is the condition known as schizophrenia. And I said, right, okay, that's, you know, I'm really interested to learn about that. But before we start, can I ask you what percentage of the population would you say could have that condition? And the answer came back, which was about 1%. You know, I accept that, you know, in the UK, that's still a lot of humans, isn't it? 1% of the UK population. But at this point, I had started to do an awful lot of research, and I just went straight back to the facilitator and said, well, my understanding of the menopause is it's 100% of a population. So can I ask you where this is going to fit into the mental health and well-being stuff? And the answer came back as it's not here. It's not here. So what I want to say from a mental health point of view is, for the very first time in a woman's life, who might never describe herself as mentally changed, mentally different, mentally unwell, because of the power of those shifting and then declining hormones, hormones are powerful, powerful things. Many women might describe themselves as mentally different. And the saddest thing that women say to me on a daily basis is this, that they thought they had early onset Alzheimer's. That is really, really common. So what I'm going to say is, in a workplace population, I'd like to wish and hope that the smallest percentage of any population would suffer from, let's call it, mental ill health. And I'm sure in all of your organisations, you've done incredible work, or you're planning to continue incredible work about mental health and well-being. And what I'm saying is, if we're not including menopause in this, you've got a huge shaped hole in your menopause plans, because the scale of this is what's the important thing to recognise, because it's 100% of any population. So what we've got to do is we've got to start joining up the dots and not have kind of mental health and well-being here and menopause perhaps nowhere at all. We've got to start being inclusive in all of this stuff. And what I say about menopause is, in my opinion, everybody will be impacted. So it might physically and mentally happen to me as a reproducing female, but I would say, you know, if you've been in my orbit, especially at my worst rages, then we women are insidious, we're everywhere. You know, we're currently making up 50.6% of the population. So it's really, really important that everybody joins in the conversation. So we've got to get away from this idea that it's only women of a certain age, because technically 1 in 100 women could encounter what's known as early menopause. And the saddest case I read about was I'm going to call her a young girl of only 12 who encountered menopause. So whilst most women are going to be roughly in their mid-40s or in their 40s when they're encountering menopause, it can affect everybody. And some of the most profound feedback I believe I've had has been from men who've often come along by their own admission unwillingly to sessions like this to say, do you know what, I wouldn't have come if you hadn't made me, but I wouldn't have researched this information any other way. And potentially this is going to help to save my marriage. So I think that's pretty profound. Understanding as well that everybody's going to be different. Each and every person's going to have a menopause like themselves. That's what's going to be hard for the individual and also perhaps for you as an employer, because you can't have a one-size-fits-all. And menopause itself does actually sit under the Equality Act 2010. And albeit it doesn't have its own protected characteristic, under the banner of age, gender and disability, it can hit under those umbrella headings. And the very first tribunal case that was brought and won was won on the basis of disability. Now, nobody I know wants to be classed as disabled going through the menopause. And some twit, I'm trying to be very polite here this afternoon, suggested that menopausal women might want to wear a badge. I'm suggesting we don't need and want to wear a badge. But it's interesting to understand that a lot of organisations might not appreciate that menopause could sit under that. And the biggest risk I would say to organisations is this, I'm going to call it a veil of ignorance. And so you might believe that many, many women think and know about this life event known as menopause. Most of us have literally no idea that what might be happening to our minds and our bodies could be menopause related. So from a business issue point of view, if you're looking at things like talent, retention, mental health, AD&I initiatives, you want to become more profitable in your organization, you want to become the employer of choice. Menopause and understanding about this life event can really, really help you with all of those things, because remember, the scale of it is 100%. And whether indirectly or directly, everyone will come across menopause at some point in their lifetime. So what can companies do to embed this kind of stuff? Well, my philosophy always is keep it simple. So start with the end in mind. So what is it that you're trying to achieve, and how clear are you on that? Who might you need to involve to become a menopause diverse employer? When might you need to do that? And what are the things that you might need to do? And specifically things like including marketing, including working groups, getting your people to be part of the problem solving process can be really, really powerful stuff. So for example, with a lot of organizations, so for example, you might decide that by 2024, that's the timescale that we're aiming for. So in the next 2 years, what are all of the things that we need to do through education and communication to make sure that we get there? Next thing is, how will you maintain that? How will you maintain that? Now, I worked in a lot of organizations who would be very, very good at this sort of stuff. So what would happen is 2022, it's all guns blazing for menopause in the workplace. Everyone's talking about, there's lots of activity. Beginning of 2023, it's still there, but not so much. By the middle of 2023, nobody's talking about it because something else has happened. And by 2024, it's not mentioned at all. And then in 2025, perhaps you get a new director who says, right, Sharon, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about menopause in the workplace. And everyone's going, oh, not that again. So what I'm saying is it's really, really important that as you set off on this journey, you've got a stake in the sand, but you also consider what's your maintenance plan. So menopause becomes something that is woven into the fabric of your organization and doesn't just become an event that begins and ends and then dies. That's really important. Question for you. Do you think you need a specific policy, or might you start looking at your current processes through what I'm going to describe as a menopause lens? So once you've understood the process better, what might you see differently with the current processes and guidelines that you currently have? And therefore, how can you build a policy, a process, a guideline that's really quite generic, that includes menopause, but includes lots of other things? Because the risk that I've seen with some organizations who have gone really specific on policies, it might mean that somebody might knock on your door in 6 months' time and say, well, hey, you've designed a menopause policy, but where's the diabetes at work policy? So just bear those things in mind. There's no right or wrong here, as Charlotte said, there's just what's right for you. But just be careful that you're not trying to legislate that everything that is happening and everything that hasn't happened yet, and you become unstuck by that. So what simple things could you do, perhaps, which are no cost or low cost? Well, for a start, I'm saying educate, educate, educate. And that's where somebody like me in my service comes in. And often organizations get worried about where will we start? And I'm saying just start somewhere, just start somewhere. And don't be surprised if in the first instance, you get a rush of women wanting to come along to sessions and you don't get many or any men coming along. That's not unusual. But let the people come who want to come, and they can start to be your influencers, because often these individuals get really fired up and they go and knock on doors and really help you to embed this kind of stuff. So it's simple things like internet pages, meetup cafes, uniform reviews. So especially from an AD&I point of view, I bet there's parts of your organizations that perhaps might have uniforms as part of that, that possibly have been historically very male dominated. So in the next uniform review, what might you do to consider the uniform design or the uniform fabrics, for example? Sanitary products. Do you offer sanitary products in your offices? If you do they, are they suitable? Are they fit for purpose? We also know period poverty is a thing. So reviewing simple things like this can make a big difference, although the change is often small. Induction programs, are you going to welcome people to your organization? Are you going to mention this type of stuff in adverts from a recruitment point of view? Are you going to make sure you've got generic photographs that include women who could look like they're menopausal in terms of the age ranges of individuals? I'm just giving you a few examples of what you might do. And often I'm asked, you know, when organizations, what might failure look like? And what I would say is often failure is because there's been no real plan. It's been dabbling around, doing bits and pieces. It hasn't been part of a strategic people plan. That you didn't maintain it, that there was no consideration after a point, what might happen then in terms of a maintenance program. It wasn't reviewed, so nobody's holding you to account and asking, you know, there seems to be not a lot of information, or it's stopped coming, what's happening with that? And often using your people to help you to drive that change is really helpful. And then finally, like, you maybe didn't communicate some of the good stuff that you're doing. I'm surprised when I go up and down the country, organizations like your own, I know have brilliant benefits for your people. You go out of your way in a lot of cases to provide brilliant benefits. And I most often ask when I'm running sessions with groups, you know, what benefits are you aware of? Is there anything related to things like menopause or counselling or appointments? And a lot of people go, oh, I never really checked that. And often one person in the room will say, oh, yes, I tried that. So all of the great stuff that you've got already and all of the great stuff that you're planning and that you do, make sure that you don't forget to communicate it. So what sort of things would you get from a service like mine? Well, for somebody like me, you would get a really, really simplistic approach. And what I'm saying is I'm providing the corporate girl chat, but for everybody. So everybody's invited to come along to learn about menopause. And I would say learning about menopause can't hurt you, but it could certainly help you. That everybody needs to take ownership of their own health and well-being from an accountability point of view. So I always say the person who needs to know their body best of all is, well, it's not a trick question and applies to everybody on this call today, is you. So it's really, really important. And when it comes to menopause, a key question that I want the audience to leave with is that doing nothing shouldn't be an option. So a key question might be, is the menopause impacting the quality of my life? So you can ask it of yourself or you can ask it of others. And if anybody answers yes to that question, then doing nothing shouldn't be an option. Because guess what most women say when I ask them that question? They say nothing. I'm just getting on with it. And from a management point of view, I don't want any managers to be worried or scared about, oh my goodness, and get what I call a leadership eye roll, where they're kind of going, oh my goodness, another thing I've got to think about. So if you think about if anyone was to disclose a pregnancy, I'm sure each and every one of you will have a beautiful policy or process for the disclosure of pregnancy and have an amount of what I'm going to call small reasonable adjustments in that toolkit. Things like desk fans, things like time off for appointments, things like, you know, a car parking space near the office. All of these things, when menopause is understood, can be applied back to this. So it's not about reinventing the wheel, it's about considering what you've already had. So what you will also get from me are a bunch of documents, things like a strategic guideline, a policy guideline, which I'm offering everybody today if you want to contact me, and the details will be later, and things like managers' guidelines. But I just want to end on a story, tell you this story, and the question would be, what would you need to do to make your workplace a diverse one? So there was a woman that I've met, and this is a pre-COVID story, who was in the boardroom. Now she was 47, in her mid-40s. She was perimenopausal, but she didn't know that at the time. And perimenopause is a time in a woman's life when your hormones are going up and down, round and round, and you literally don't have a clue what might be happening to your mind and body. So she was having this meeting, as would usually happen. It was in the boardroom. She described her colleagues as white middle-aged men. That was her description, not mine. And so about 3/4 of the way through the meeting, she felt like she was having a flooding episode. In other words, a really heavy period. So therefore, she couldn't concentrate. And what she said was she felt like the meeting was taking ages. And like many of you on this call today, she was suffering from what I'd call meetingitis. In other words, she had to be back to back to back meetings. So when the meeting ended, she was hoping that her colleagues would have to leave the room so she could get up and just see what on earth was going on. And of course, on this particular occasion, a couple of guys grabbed a coffee, were chatting, you know, innocently in the room. And she said she sat what felt like hours, and it was only minutes. Till in the end, she had to literally get up and leave. She had to leave. And when she stood up, not only was she covered, but so was the seat. Now, within less than 6 months, because she felt embarrassment, she felt ashamed, she felt she couldn't be part of that team anymore because she was being judged. So clearly the culture wasn't great, but she left. She left. So my question is, if somebody was in your organisation, what provision might there be for somebody like that now? So therefore, what might you need to do to make your organisation a menopause diverse place? So thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Sharon. So much in that, and a really provoking way to finish, asking that question and telling that story. So thank you very much. But I would also urge you just to drop Sharon an email, and she'll put her email address in the chat. The policy document that she mentioned, I've seen it and it's really great. So it just looks at all the policies that a housing association would have and runs a menopause lens over them. So definitely worth dropping Sharon an email to receive your copy of that. So next up is Liz from 13 Group, and she's going to talk a little bit about 13's groups done and what they're aspiring to do in the future. So yeah, over to you, Liz. If you want to just give a little bit of introduction to yourself, and Hannah will load your slides.
Yeah, thanks Charlotte. Yeah, hi everyone, lovely to be here. My name's Liz Thompson, and I'm head of HR Business Partners at 13, and just going to take you through this afternoon a couple of slides really, just to kind of tell you about 13, a little bit of background, and then what we've been doing, why it's important for 13 to be menopause diverse, and the things that we've got planned. So yeah. So as I said, it's lovely to be here, and I just thought it would be useful first of all to tell you a little bit about 13 for those of you who aren't familiar. So at 13, what we're about is providing homes, support and opportunities to grow, and our vision is to provide safe quality homes and services to the best environmental standards. Next slide please. So in terms of 13, we were formed in 2014 through a merger and the consolidation of 4 housing companies and a care organisation. Currently, we own and manage over 35,000 properties, providing services for more than 72,000 customers. Now, the majority of our properties are in the Tees Valley, but we are actively expanding throughout the North East and Yorkshire with a growing development programme to meet housing needs. So to help us do this, we've got over 1,500 colleagues, and 47% of which are women. Next slide, please. So why is it important to 13 to be menopause diverse? Well, we're aiming to give our colleagues more great days at work, and our values-based behaviours include things like colleagues being connected, proud, valued, energised and in control. And how we support colleague well-being is key to how they feel about 13 as a place to work and in deciding whether or not they're having great days. So in terms of our statistics, they really speak for themselves. We know that women are staying at work a lot longer, as Sharon had mentioned, and that 47% of our colleagues are women, and 43% of those are over the age of 45. So this really gave us a clear business case that we needed to start to do some work in this area. This and the fact that it's also becoming menopause diverse is part of our people strategy as well. We've also read numerous facts and figures, and we know that 80% of menopausal women say that they find little empathy or support from employers. So we decided that we wanted to be different and really support the peri and menopausal women we have and educate the wider workforce about menopause and its far-reaching impacts. So the menopause conversation and all that goes with it is also really important to 13, as it's got links to so many things that we're passionate about, and that includes well-being, diversity inclusion agenda and talent management. And we really hope one of our aims is that the work that we're doing will help to retain women and key talent in the business. Next slide. Thank you. So in terms of our journey so far, we've been working with Sharon Macarthur since 2018. So in this first year, we didn't really know how managers and colleagues would react. So we took the step of just putting some sessions out there to test the water, which was really a come and listen approach. Our leadership team have been really great, actually. They're really involved, and they went through the training first, and they fed back that it was really eye-opening and that it made good sense to continue with the training. We were actually bowled over with the response and feedback that we got from colleagues attending the sessions, and they were really pleased that we'd started to do work in this area, so much so that we've arranged some extra sessions. So the following year, in 2019, we started to formalise this training for managers, making the sessions elective but expected. so that our colleagues could expect a consistent experience from our managers. Alongside this, we continue to offer general sessions for all colleagues. We had a little bit of a pause in 2020 whilst we got to grips with the pandemic, but in 2021 we were back with Miss Menopause, delivering online content and promoting the sessions via video. So we've done a lot around training, and we think that this really helped to lay the foundations and get the message out there that 13 are comfortable talking about the menopause and the perceived mystery that exists around it, and that we're now having more open conversations with our colleagues about their needs and what we can do to support them. So we've also made some other changes. We've changed our sickness absence reporting list to include menopause as a reason for absence. This helps to make sure that we're capturing data and reporting on menopause as a reason for absence, and that we're supporting colleagues appropriately, and that we're also they're not penalised as a result of this. On checking the latest statistics, I'm really pleased to report that it is being used as a reason for absence. We've also worked in partnership with our trade unions, and we now have boxes filled with feminine products in all 49 female toilets across the business. So this helps with menopause, and I know Sharon had mentioned it earlier, it also helps to address the period poverty issue as well. In terms of flexible working, we already had the ability for any colleague across the business to request flexible working, but as a result of the pandemic, we changed our approach to how we work on a more permanent basis. So we now have our colleagues grouped into 4 different categories, and they are trade, which is our trade and manual roles, hub, which are those colleagues who need to work from one of our sites to deliver their role, home, which are those colleagues who work predominantly from home, and then the final category is roam, which is a mixture of home and hub-based working. So we know that this way of working will undoubtedly have helped more colleagues manage their menopause symptoms, but we're not under the illusion that just because we've changed the way that we work, that's it. We've still got a lot more to do in this area. And we've also developed some menopause guidance for colleagues and line managers, which includes line manager responsibilities in relation to the menopause, and more importantly, how managers can have a conversation with women about this. And if you're interested, the CIPD have a really good resource in relation to this on how managers should handle a conversation about menopause. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of what we're doing next, we've got still a lot of work to do on menopause, and that's going to continue over the coming 2 years. So we plan to embed the training so it becomes business as usual and is delivered on a cyclical basis to ensure that we capture that new cohort of managers and colleagues. Our working group starts next month, and the plan is that it's going to be run by colleagues, for colleagues, by those who are committed to helping 13 become menopause friendly. And the group is going to be responsible for identifying and reviewing different processes, and we'll be looking to them to recommend improvements and initiatives. Shortly after the group has been established, we hope to get some colleagues sharing their stories about their experience with menopause. We've had colleagues in the past share their own stories on mental health and neurodiversity, and that's been really well received by colleagues. We'll also be developing the resources on our intranet page too. We've got some information on there, but we know that we can make this a lot more diverse. The training that we've delivered is open to all colleagues, and we've had quite a lot of our male managers attend, but we've got more to do in terms of engaging the male side of our workforce. So going forward, we'll be considering what we need to do for men in terms of awareness and support, both on a personal basis and how they work with and support female colleagues. When it comes to holistic therapies and treatments, and particularly reflexology, we know that they can help to relieve the symptoms that many women experience, such as hot flushes, cramps and headaches, and they can also provide a safe space for women to relax and to be self-focused. So we're looking to give women a taster of this to see if it's something that can help them with. We've recently just appointed a new occupational health provider as well. So we're talking to them about what an open referral could look like for women who are experiencing menopausal symptoms to enable them to seek advice and support directly from occupational health. And finally, as part of our wealth and our wellbeing support for colleagues, we already have a contract in place with a company called Simply Health, which provides colleagues with the ability to be able to claim money back for a variety of things. And it also gives them the opportunity to have an appointment with a GP if they're struggling to access their own. So what we're looking at is trying to do something different and see if there's a GP that we can give women direct access to who specialises in menopause, and whether the appetite is there for this to be facilitated through the employer. So, and that was just a very quick canter through of what we're doing. So happy to take any questions.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Liz. Has anyone got any questions for Liz? If you want to just come off mute. Yeah.
I do. I'm Sarah from Leeds and Yorkshire Housing. I was just thinking, do any of the women get embarrassed talking to male managers about this issue?
I think there might have been that embarrassment initially, but I think because the conversation is so open, and actually a lot of our leadership team talk about it, and you know, some of them, I'm sure they won't mind me saying, are women of a certain age. If Sharon remembers training them, and they are quite loud and quite vocal. So I think that, you know, if you've got people at the top shouting about it and talking about it, it seems to kind of help to normalise that conversation. So undoubtedly there will be pockets where people, you know, in maybe male dominated environments, especially if you've got male managers all the way up the chain, but there is I think that's diminishing. So I think that the work that we've done over the past couple of years has really helped to you know, embed that, and especially, you know, they go in the toilets and see menopause, you know, menopause sign their period stuff for periods and things like that. So they walk around and they can start to see the visual things as well, and become more confident.
All right, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Liz. Any other questions for Liz?
Yes, sorry, can I just ask what you think your biggest challenge has been with this programme?
Probably the pandemic, if I'm honest. I would say, because we've been really fortunate with our leadership team in terms of well-being overall, and we've been pushing at an open door. You know, we've done a lot around mental health as well, and our leadership team go through that training first. If I had to say something, I'd probably say it's going to be engaging the male workforce and just actually getting them to come on board with that. That's what I would say. And we know that we've got quite a large trade workforce. We've got over 400 colleagues in that area, so it's probably coordinating them. You know, first of all is the engagement, but then actually being able to pull them off the job to kind of come and listen. But I think it's so beneficial. You know, I know Sharon was saying that when she trained at our place, that a guy had come up to her and said, I really didn't realise what women are going through. I'm off to go and kind of, you know, speak to my wife about it in more detail, which is good. So I think it's that side that we need to tackle a bit more, which we're going to look at in more detail.
Brilliant, thank you, Liz. Any other questions for Liz?
I've got a question. It's Lindsay from Yorkshire Housing. Hello, that was really interesting actually, and I really appreciate that. I'll definitely be looking at some of those ideas. I was just thinking about your come and listen approach. How did you kind of facilitate that? Was it kind of through like a bit of an open forum? Did you just put an invite out there to colleagues, or was it a regular sessions that went off over a period of time?
Yeah. So that's what we did with Sharon when we were talking in the early days about what was the best approach, because although the leadership team were really receptive, we didn't know how the rest of the workforce would act. React to it rather. So we just communicated that through managers and through our intranet that this is what we were doing, that we were going to put some sessions on, and we had a really good sign up. You know, we were just really overwhelmed by the response. Like you say, we've got a lot of women, so the majority were women, but I think that certainly from a manager's perspective, I was just looking back at the first kind of a lot of people who've been through, and there was a lot of men on there, so there was no pressure. It was just, let's, you know, dip our toe in and see what it's like, and see what the reaction's like, and it was really positive.
Oh, brilliant, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. If anyone else has got a question for Liz, if you just want to pop it in the channel, we'll give Liz a break now, let her have a drink of water, and then she'll be back on to answer any questions in the chat panel. So we're now going to move away from housing. We're going to hear by video from Lisa Winward, who's the Chief Constable at North Yorkshire Police, and she's also the chair of the National Menopause Action Group. So we thought this would be really interesting just to see what's happening outside the sector, but also I suppose to give a bit of a national angle on this. And you know, this isn't a problem that's going to be unique to every single housing association. So I suppose this is also looking at how could we work together to sort of solve this problem and ensure best practice. And I know we've got someone from the NatFed on this session, so hopefully this will be interesting. So she's going to talk a bit about what they've done, so whether it's the he for she stuff, changes to the uniform, changes to the fitness programme, or changing how they record absence and sickness. So I'll let Hannah load the video. Hopefully the technology will be absolutely seamless. And then once we've heard from Lisa, we'll be back into housing again to hear from Vanessa from Housing 21. Thanks everyone.
Hello, I'm Chief Constable Lisa Winward of North Yorkshire Police, and I'm also the National Police Chiefs Council lead for Women's Health. Women's Health portfolio also includes menopause and our Menopause and Action Group, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So a little bit about our workforce in policing. So policing in England and Wales consists of 43 police forces. So that includes Scotland, our partners in Police Service of Northern Ireland, and all of the forces in England and Wales. So overall, our organisation as Policing UK is around 38,000 female police officers across those 43 forces. So that's about 30% of the total workforce of police officers. But when you consider women aged over 45 who may be starting to suffer from menopausal symptoms or perimenopause, that makes up about 1/3 of the total of police officers. So that's a big workforce to take into account some of those impacts of the menopause. We also have police staff, and they relate to about 61% of our police staff are females. And again, as the average age of our workforce starts to increase, we really need to think more and have a better understanding of the impact that it has on our female workforce. Not only on the workforce, but also on women's families, their friends, their colleagues within the workplace. Also makes a big difference in us making sure that we have a better understanding of menopause across our workforce. So how do we run our national portfolios? So given I've explained I'm the national lead for menopause and women's health, I thought I would share with you briefly how the National Police Chiefs Council is made up and how we make sure that guidance and policy is shared across policing across the United Kingdom. So as you can see from this slide, I'm part of a bigger structure. So we have an overarching Diversity, Equality and Inclusion Coordination Committee, which is chaired by Chief Constable Carl Folks, who's the North Wales Chief Constable. Reporting into Carl are lots of different work streams into that DE&I portfolio, one of which is called the Gender Portfolio, and that's chaired by colleague Chief Constable Rachel Swan. So that gender portfolio provides all things related to gender in our working arrangements as a police service, reporting up into Carl Folks, and he reports up into the National Police Chiefs Council, so that we have some consistency across policing about how we manage gender issues. And as you can see, we have a work stream within that gender portfolio that's all about women's health, including menopause, endometriosis, breast cancer, and other women's health issues. And as those portfolios develop, we can of course expand out those different portfolios that's sitting under that women's health workforce stream to have a focus and some leadership around those issues to help people across policing. In this structure, menopause is the most mature of the working groups that are in this cluster across the police service. And we also have about 150 members that come to the Menopause Action Group These include all of the police services that I've already mentioned, but also our wider partners in law enforcement. So the Civil Nuclear Constabulary are represented, British Transport Police, our Ministry of Defence colleagues, and representatives from some of our staff associations. So our unions, people like at the Federal Police Federation of England and Wales, Unison that support police staff, our Superintendents Association, and we also have representatives that join us from other portfolios in the National Police Chiefs Council that look at well-being and other aspects that can impact on women's health. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. So how did we get the Menopause Action Group going? Well, its purpose, it was created in 2013 and was responsible for setting and driving local, regional and national direction and strategy and policies and manage issues around menopause within the police service more broadly. So this group get together on a quarterly basis at the moment, but we do dip in and out within those quarterly meetings to make sure that we share best practice with each other. We have a better understanding of the impact of menopause on workplace environments, but also keeping in touch with different groups of people. So if individuals have a problem in the workplace, there'll be a force somewhere, there'll be a policing organisation somewhere and somebody in it who's already got the knowledge and experience of that issue. And we can put people in touch with our colleagues and partners across the country that can help an individual with a specific problem that they might have already dealt with and been able to resolve for somebody. So it's a really good opportunity of us linking in to help people with issues around their uniform. We have a job-related fitness test. So sometimes women suffer at the time around menopause and perimenopause with their fitness and being able to pass the fitness test. So we have some female-only fitness test support for people. And we tap into academic experts, subject matter experts. We've had presentations from specialist consultants who've studied a lot around perimenopause and menopause, who can particularly give that advice that we can then pass on to people in our workforce. So moving on to the practical elements of what we do in Menopause Action Group. Over the last 18 months, we've worked collaboratively. We've looked at reviewing and refreshing all of the policies around menopause in the workplace. So we've worked with our College of Policing, that's our professional body. They set standards and support professional practice in policing and training. So we've tapped into them to make sure that that guidance is consistent across policing, and that we can write policy that can be shared across the organisation, and people can then use that policy and guidance to support them in conversations with line managers, in raising awareness in the workplace about the issues that they are experiencing. And we've also used this policy to help, for example, Police Scotland have now got a menopause toolkit, and we've got a guidance document that's a really helpful tool for people, practical tool, guidance document that supervisors can use, leaders can use, individuals can use themselves, so that they're supported through that journey using that guidance document. We've also developed an information and awareness video, which hopefully you're going to see a little bit later. We've also got an online community of practitioners to share best practice. So there's something called the Knowledge Hub, which is a national system. It's electronic. People can tap into that from anywhere in the country and have ready access to an electronic version of all the guidance, lots of documents, lots of best practice that people can tap into there and then online. That's regularly updated, and people can share information on that Knowledge Hub. So I talked a little bit there about the broader well-being of people in the workplace. So we also tap into our well-being offer. So in policing, a scheme called Oscar Kilo has been developed. So Oscar Kilo is basically a national wellbeing service across policing, and it covers all sorts of subject matters to do with wellbeing, health, mental health, and also physical health of people who work in a policing environment. So because menopause is one of those really key issues that we want to communicate, educate people around, we've also tapped into Oscar Kilo. So their website, which is under review with a refresh planned, we've tapped into that to make sure our material and documents and videos are also available on the Oscar Kilo site, because it'll reach a lot more people. We've also recently undertaken a survey across forces to understand the reporting and recording of absence in the workplace, because our systems don't always record the true reason why people are absent from work. And they certainly, until more recently, didn't have a drop down on them that gave people the option to say that their absence from work was linked to their menopausal symptoms. So we've been able to inform best practice in this area by people now having the option to declare that it's a menopause related symptom, and that can be recorded, and we can use those systems to measure the true impact of menopause on absenteeism in the workplace or those medical conditions or issues that people are experiencing. The survey also allowed us to harvest some best practice. So we're trying to take all the best practice from those surveys and create some bite-sized case studies that we can also share across policing about the issues that are affecting women facing the menopause, some of the great solutions that are out there in place, and some of the best practice that's been shared. We also need to make sure that we embrace our male colleagues in this journey, and therefore we have a he for she programme where our male colleagues can really support and champion sharing that information, education and support for women in the workplace as their colleagues, and support people through that journey. Lots of our male colleagues are supervisors, they might be supervising females who are going through the menopause, so really important again that we embrace that opportunity. And we've seen some great best practice with male-only focus groups to share information about menopause, because men would rather get together and talk about it amongst themselves rather than amongst female colleagues. And it's really helped some of those colleagues support, for example, their wives at home that might be going through the menopause, and they didn't have that information until they went to a focus group at work. So another great opportunity for us to share that information more widely in the workforce that can help people at home and on that journey. The thing that's probably helped people the most on our journey is a doodle video that we've been able to create, which is a really simple one-stop shop of sharing all things in relation to the menopause, and is a really easy video to watch that you can share far and wide amongst your workforce, colleagues, friends, to help them understand in a simple video and some of the issues that they might come across in respect of supporting female colleagues through the menopause. So I shall close there. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the video.
Thank you so much to Lisa. Obviously, I think that's pretty seamless, actually. Hopefully, you wouldn't have even realised that Lisa wasn't with us. And thank you to the police for spending the time in doing that. What we're going to do is Hannah's going to put the link to the video in the chat, so you can watch that in your own time and also share it with your colleagues. And the video is also included in the toolkit, as was the guidance document and a few other things that Lisa mentioned. Brilliant, thank you so much. So we're now going to move on to Vanessa from Housing 21. And as Liz did, she's going to share their journey as a housing association towards being a menopause diverse employer, what they've done, where they've got to, and what's next on their journey. So over to you, Vanessa, if you want to introduce yourself, and Hannah will load your slides.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. So in the interest of time, etc., I'm going to try not to repeat what previous speakers have said, and just focus on other areas. So I work for Housing 21, which is a specialist older people's housing provider. We work across England, providing extra care and retirement living. So we have about 3,500 staff, as we directly employ all of our care staff, where we provide care into our extra care buildings. And so about 40% of our staff are over the age of, are female and over the age of 50. So a significant number in terms of perimenopausal and menopausal women. Listening to other people, I think the start of our journey was perhaps less strategic than others. It started by when myself and a colleague were delivering a training session to some of our care workers on a scheme, and in coming into the room, they all rushed to get to the back of the room, to sit by a window that was only slightly open due to the restraints on the window. And then we put all these lovely strategic plans on the chairs, and they really weren't bothered about the content. They just picked them up and started using them as fans. So we ploughed on with the session, and then at the end of it, I said to my colleague, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be putting our colleagues in a situation where obviously they're not going to take in a lot of this information because they were physically uncomfortable. So I'll just wait for the slides to catch up. Yeah, so if you could go forward. Yeah, if we just stop there for a minute, that'd be great, thank you. And so I thought, well, oh no, sorry, can you go on to the next slide? Sorry, fantastic, thank you. So I thought we needed to do something about this. So I went back, I reported to the chief exec, so I thought I needed to have this conversation with him. And I was expecting quite a kind of difficult and awkward conversation, but he was actually really supportive and said, yeah, absolutely, we need to do this. So I'd got that buy-in straight away from the top of the organisation, which was fantastic. I'm a researcher by nature, so I obviously had to do a survey to give us some information. So if you could just flip to the next slide, and then I'll ask you to flip back in a minute. I did a survey. We had sort of nearly 200 responses to it, and these are just some of the top issues that were coming out. And of those responses, 96% was sleep difficulties. It's huge, isn't it? And we had a lot of qualitative comments, and you'll see a few there. People really struggling after not being able to sleep. There's obviously the hot flushes, forgetfulness, all of those changes that we've heard about. And I thought it was really interesting that 67% experience these symptoms daily. Only 22% had tried HRT, but actually it'd been really helpful for those people that had tried it. So I thought that was quite an interesting finding. So after I'd done the survey and sort of spoken about it, I pulled together a steering group. And this was really to make sure that we covered all areas of the organisation. We have a devolved model, so colleagues all over England, so it's quite difficult sometimes for messages to get out to people. And that steering group was responsible for pulling together a policy in which we included the andropause as well as the menopause, sort of trying to speak to some of our male colleagues there. And what we challenged the members of that steering group to do was to say menopause at least 3 times during every day, so that we started to sort of normalise that language. And then we pulled together some resources, as other people have mentioned, on our intranet, and we also launched our Menovists, and that's a group of people, a bit like mental health first aiders, but you can go to and they can speak to you about menopause, signpost, etc. But also, as the question was earlier, if employees were finding it perhaps embarrassing or stressful to speak to male managers, then these Menovists were here to support. And just a word on the policy, we didn't pull together the policy to be strict about it, but rather we saw it as a way to break the ice for some people who were perhaps less confident in talking about this subject, in that they can download the policy, put it on the table in front of their manager, and that would help the conversation. And then, whilst we didn't want to narrow down the symptoms of their menopause to hot flushes, there was also that recognition in the survey that a lot of people were suffering from these. And so I managed to get a central budget so that anyone who wanted a fan, a handheld fan or a desk fan or anything, was able to get them, bearing in mind we have carers who are working across extra care schemes, some of which are quite warm anyway. So that went down really well. And then, as others have said, we need to keep it on the agenda. On the right hand side there, that's just a snippet from a leaflet that we pulled together in terms of helping people talk about the menopause, and that's also included in the toolkit, which is available to you. And the one after, I think, yeah, next again, please. From the survey, we saw that only 31% had spoken to their manager about it, but actually when they had spoken to their manager, they felt supported by it. So a real need there to embed the work across the organisation to make that 31% increase. Just 2 days ago, as part of International Women's Day, we held our first Menopause Cafe. We had nearly 50 people on the call, and one brave man. And it was fantastic. We split into virtual smaller groups of sort of 6-7 people, and we didn't have an agenda. It was really just asking people to introduce themselves, why they were there. We had a really mixed bag of people there, different roles, different ages, there for different reasons. Some wanted to share their stories, some just wanted to listen. Reflecting on what we've heard earlier, a lot of people were there because they were just a bit confused by the menopause. They had symptoms, they didn't know whether they were related to the menopause or not. And one of the big things that we did share was the different experiences with GPs, bearing in mind that GPs don't have to be trained in the menopause. And we heard some awful stories about people being laughed at, etc., by their GPs. Also a lot of sharing of non-medical interventions, which was great. We have Workplace by Facebook, which I'm sure a lot of you do, and we have a support group on there as well. And I just wanted to end really with a case study that we did. So we started talking about the menopause across the organisation, and a male court manager, we call them scheme managers, contacted me. And he explained that he had 2 female workers who had always been excellent in their roles, but recently he'd seen their work deteriorate, and he'd actually put them on a performance management programme. He then said he'd been listening to the work around the menopause, asked me if I could send him lots of information. He then had a further conversation with both of these ladies, and it became apparent that they were really struggling with menopausal symptoms. And so on finding that out, he took them off the performance management programme, gave them the support that they needed, and also then shared that information across his court with his other staff and residents. And in my mind, that's just what we need to be doing. We've potentially saved those 2 women from leaving our organisation because they weren't being supported and they were struggling. And so to me, that is just a demonstration of the impact that we can have through this work. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That was absolutely brilliant and really insightful. I'm really pleased to hear that the cafe went so well as well. You having 50 people attend, that's amazing, and it was something that you've been planning for a while. Bit of a theme as well with what you and Liz said around GPs. That came through really strongly in the last event that we did on understanding the menopause. Some people having really good experiences, some people having really poor experiences, and a lot of confusion around kind of HRT. So it'd be really interesting to keep us posted, you and Liz, about how the offer and the intervention from GPs as part of the package works and is received. Brilliant, thank you so much.
I was just going to say one final word on the cafe, actually, and that it was so well received that there's been an ask to do it on a quarterly basis. People want to have that opportunity, so I think that's really positive as well.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. And how did the man who joined found it as well, as the kind of minority? Was he like, is he going to come back?
So I did contact him afterwards to kind of say, you know, how fantastic it was that he came along, and I've co-opted him onto the menopause group, because there was also a recognition in the cafe that we need to engage more with our male colleagues. He's a head of finance in the organisation, so actually having a senior male colleague on board with that, I think, can only help. So it was great, but he said he felt completely intimidated.
Of course you did. Of course you've seconded him onto that. That's absolutely brilliant. Never a missed opportunity, Vanessa. Amazing. Thank you so much. Right, so we're now going to hear from Jeanette from the Manchester Stress Institute. Jeanette's our final speaker, and amongst lots of other advice that she's going to give, she's also given some menopause boosting recipes for anyone who's wanting to run one of the menopause cafes that Vanessa just talked about. So that's a seamless segue into our final speaker, who's Jeanette. Over to you, Jeanette.
So hi everybody, I'm going to share my screen with you shortly and run through a few slides. First, I want to say what a fantastically engaging and dynamic, I'm going to say, presentation that everybody else has done. So I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jeanette Jackson and I'm from the Manchester Stress Institute, and we are experts in corporate health and wellbeing, and the Menopause at Work being one of the programs that we provide. We are all a team of experts. The majority of our team are scientists. I'm a biochemist and a sports scientist. So my particular area of expertise is what's happening underneath the skin, hormonally, biologically, as a result of extraneous factors such as stress that would impact upon physical, mental and emotional well-being. And most certainly the menopause comes under that remit. So I think, you know, from my side, I'm going to talk to you as an educator and a provider of content to help your staff. So I want to talk to you about a few case studies that we've done recently. So we have Menopause Team 999. So we do a tremendous amount of work with the emergency services. And these are people that work under extreme conditions in really high octane, intense environments that are very dispersed workforce. They work shifts, as I'm sure some of your staff do as well. Of course, the mixed gender, and we've done a lot of menopause training with them. And it's really interesting because we ran a pilot program for these people, and we've talked a lot. I've heard a lot of the speakers talk today about the impact of the menopause on, you know, on quality of life, and this pilot program really underpinned that. So we looked at resilience, we looked at sleep. I'm not sure that sleep's been mentioned very much today, but we looked at the impact of poor quality sleep. We looked at helping to really engage and enhance energy, and then also really fundamentally nutrition. And I mean, I've got tons of videos I could play for you with people saying it's literally changed my life. And I think that that's the one thing for me is the variable around how can we engage people and activate a real desire and a passion for them to want to take the baton of all this brilliant information that you are providing, to take that baton and apply it. You know, it's all right handing out the information, but how are people going to apply it and start on stage one? So for example, just this morning, we're working with the North West Ambulance Service, and one of the ladies on there, she's 58, and she said, I've been wanting to make changes for a long time. I just didn't know where to start. Where do I start? There's so much information, it's so conflicting. So, you know, the pilot program for the Team 999 was a great success, and I'm going to invite you to join us on a pilot program at the end. So please stay tuned for that. We've also done a lot of work around menopause, diversity and inclusion. So, for example, the lesbian menopause, the trans menopause, and of course, as mentioned previously, looking at the andropause. And in terms of all of that, I genuinely do feel that organisations are looking for the science behind that. What's the science behind that? Not one of your, in terms of well-being, not one of your team and your staff across any organisation needs to be encouraged to eat 5 portions of fruits and vegetables a day. Nobody does. What they want now is the science behind that. Why? Why am I doing that? Why has that happened? And that's where we come in as scientists. So most certainly the Menopause Diversity and Inclusion webinar and programme is absolutely fantastic. So just very, very briefly touching upon some of the science. I'm sure that many of you are aware that 2 of the primary hormones that are involved in the menopause are progesterone and estrogen. So what we have is a programme for Menopause Champions. I'm sure many of you have got mental health champions, but the menopause champions are people that we have really educated in mental health aspects and also nutrition and communication around that. So these are the go-to people if somebody's having a particularly difficult day on the menopause. So let's say they're experiencing real brain fog or difficulties in concentration or focus, or they just want somebody to talk to who's got that extra knowledge above and beyond the mental health champions, and they want to go to them for menopause. That's what we can do as well. Also, things where staff would really have, you know, an interest already around what supplements can I take to help me get through the menopause? What natural herbs and you know, kind of tinctures are available? So we do all sorts around that as well. And these are often pop-up lunchtime learning sessions. But I mentioned that we help to debunk a lot of the science in the menopause. And I think, you know, that's a key fundamental for you in terms of your organisation, providing that information, because we really want to initiate that power and that passion and that understanding and that education around the menopause. So I've just popped this slide in that's part of our week 1 of our 4-week programme. So estrogen plays many roles in the body, and just, you know, really is crucially important. So you can see here that it helps to regulate the menstrual cycle. Very important, right the way across all the different stages of the menopause. It helps to keep a healthy libido, it helps to maintain healthy levels of cholesterol, really helps to help it flow, and also helps to support skin and elasticity, but also really important for mental health and mood. So when we know around early perimenopause, when the estrogen levels start to decline, we can see in women erratic, heavy periods. Now, you've just been talking about this, you know, how women can have these periods that are really heavy, very erratic, and you know, they can't kind of plan for that because they don't quite know when they're going to have that. So that's a really important thing. It also helps to keep a healthy libido. So when people are not having as much estrogen as before, then their sex drive can drop. That can be really challenging for women in terms of their interpersonal relationships. Maintains healthy cholesterol. That then, I think, precipitates a pop-up lunchtime learning session on how to maintain a healthy cholesterol, you know, when women are going through the menopause. Helps to keep pelvic floor strong and healthy and strong. So therefore, that's very much about the understanding of how you can support women to make sure that they're quite near a toilet if they're experiencing this, and support them in that way. Healthy bone, healthy hair, you know, skin, all these are important for confidence, self-esteem. That can really be affected when women are going on the menopause. And of course, positively affecting the mood and mental health is absolutely crucial. What can we do? So the symptoms of the perimenopause are many and varied, but we most certainly know that they can affect our physical well-being and also our emotional well-being as well. So let's just say that one of your members of staff has had real difficulty in sleeping. So say they are feeling really tired at the moment. How many boxes on this ride do you think that they may tick? If you are not sleeping very well, is it true that you may be irritable? Is it true that you may experience anxiety and tension, get more easily upset, struggle with concentration, maybe mood swings, maybe being more indecisive? That is absolutely true for many people. Also, things like food craving. If you're hungry and you're craving sugars, you're craving, you know, cakes, biscuits, chocolates, crisps, whatever that might be, and you're not having them for whatever reason, you may be on a diet, then is that also true that you may feel irritable, crying spells, forgetfulness, you know, poor concentration, mood swings? So this is really very much about meeting people where they are at. One of the consequences of the menopause can be this, which is estrogen dominance. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with this phase, estrogen dominance, but what that's about is when we're going through the menopause, and even when we've had our menopause, we still have estrogen manufactured in various sites within the body, but progesterone has stopped. So that means that some women can be particularly sensitive to estrogen dominance. And some of the symptoms for this, most certainly one of the primary symptoms for this, mood swings and real anger, like, you know, volatility of emotions, which can be very distressing for some women because it can really affect their personality. So what we want to do, and what we want to help you to do, is to help staff do what they can to underpin and support their body whilst these hormones are fluctuating and fundamentally eliminating. And there's a tremendous amount that you can do to help support brain function and energy production at a cellular level. And that's where our experts come in. So what we help people to do is to balance the energy in with the energy out. So I'm sure that you've all heard of the expression corona calories. And then people that are on the menopause will often say, I've put some weight on around my abdomen, around my hips, and that's distressing. So giving staff education around how to manage their energy in terms of the quantity of food that they are eating, and then really upping the energy to counteract that can just be a game changer in itself. Looking at the impact of the menopause on estrogen and insulin. So we know that the reduction of estrogen in menopausal women can accelerate the development of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So that's really, really important. So then modifying the diet to drop and reduce the amount of carbohydrates, and also then manipulating when the carbohydrates are going into the body. We also know that some women around the menopause will experience bloating, real distension, discomfort. Again, we can help with that. Brain fog, hands up who's experienced brain fog, pre-menopause, during the menopause, post-menopause. Brain fog is massive. And as a biochemist, my area of expertise is how to feed that menopausal brain, how to improve concentration, focus, and memory. The prefrontal cortex, which is our executive functionality of our brain, relies very heavily on estrogen, which is why when women do go on the HRT, almost immediately say, I feel like me again. But we can do a tremendous amount with that with nutrition. Vanessa's talked about her menopause cafes. We run menopause cafes for organisations, and this is quite simply about how can you provide content and information for staff that's going to be really engaging, but that is actionable. This is an action that you can take, exactly like Charlotte said, today, that will tomorrow have a positive impact on your well-being. And the menopause cafes we run link very much into our Menopause Champions. And then we provide to you, and you can, as part of the program that Charlotte's giving, you can email us and we will send you some delicious recipes, our top secret menopause brownie. Who doesn't want a menopause brownie? High in protein, going to help with energy, sustainability, reduce cravings, and provide them really important essential amino acids that help to provide hormone function. Also, our very famous hot flush soup. So if people are experiencing night sweats and they are, sweating during the night, it's really important that they know how to replenish electrolytes so that their magnesium, their potassium, and their sodium and calcium are balanced. And then I think, in terms of going forward and this level of education for staff, exactly like Vanessa said there, it's very much about an ongoing process. So educating staff on a regular basis to enable the passion and the drive for them to help themselves to be sustained. So we provide some really brilliant, colourful, engaging newsletters every month that's packed with recipes and ideas and actions that staff can take for themselves. And then finally, I would like to invite you to participate in our burnout programme, Beat the Burnout programme, a pilot programme on menopause, resilience and mental health. So what we're looking for is this is the programme itself before I do that. This is a programme all about resilience, boosting mental health, helping to reduce stress, sleeping better. Even any one of these, whichever one you choose, can have a massive impact. But the programme is a collection of all of this. So what we're looking for is 5 members of staff from 8 organisations to take part in this pilot programme. And it's very much around resilience, sleep, energy and nutrition. So if you email me, we'll send you the full programme. And we're looking for 5 members for 8 organisations so we can get a real great cross section. We also, of course, want men on this. So this covers, as you can see there, the menopause and the andropause. So if you're interested in that, please email us via Charlotte, but the email's there anyway, and I'll pop it in the chat in a second. And thank you for your time. I hope you found it of some use. Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. That was absolutely amazing. 100% definitely want the menopause brownie. Well done for dealing with all the tech problems. Hopefully the next time we run an event we'll all be face to face and we'll be worrying about fire alarms, access to toilets and catering. Let's let's put all this technology to one side. Thank you so much. Jeanette's going to pop her email address in the chat, so please do get in touch with her for all of those goodies and to sign up to the pilot as well. I just want to say a massive thank you to the 5 speakers that we've had today. You've been absolutely brilliant and a real pleasure to work with, so thank you. I feel really inspired now. And also a big thank you to all of the Wish team that make this kind of thing happen. In particular, a big shout out to Hannah, who's done all the work on the toolkit and general stuff on videos and things like that. So thank you so much. Any comments from any of the speakers? Anything that anyone wants to add?
I would just add, if I can, that as part of the 999 team emergency and the LGBT work that we did, we brought in gynecologists and endocrinologists. And again, I think that level of expertise, and I know Vanessa said that they've done something similar. I think that level of expertise where you have people that have got the real science brains that staff can ask really personal questions to is really important. And what we do before then is we allow staff to email prior to the event, because I think sometimes, you know, we have to remember that the menopause, it's a very personal transition for people. So I think, you know, whatever kind of interventions you're doing, if you allow staff the opportunity to ask questions privately, I think that's a great way to do it as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jeanette. Sharon, Liz, Vanessa, any last kind of thoughts from you guys?
I think just to back up what Jeanette's just said, when we first started our work, we had Dr. Newman in, who's a real advocate of HRT, and it was just such an interesting and informative session in that she gave a real objective opinion, talked about how estrogen impacts on changes, and our staff were able to ask her any questions that they wanted to, which was great, especially for those that had really poor experiences from their GP, and that, you know, it's something that we could do at fairly minimal cost, but the impact was really significant.
Yeah, I agree with that, Vanessa, and I think we did a presentation yesterday on the menopause for the National Grid. And, you know, running down the questions, you know, we've got this little chat box there, constantly kept saying, why did my GP not tell me this? How come I'm only just learning this now? And that is what you want. You want these kind of light bulb ka-ching moments where people go, I get it now. And now I think I'm less fearful. And now I'm less fearful, I'm less anxious. I can now start to action some of these topics and things that people are discussing.
And I would add to that and say it's about letting people know they have a choice, but that everyone's going to be absolutely unique and different in their own experience. And my message is there's no right or wrong here. There's just what's right for you. But doing nothing shouldn't be one of them, because many women left to their own devices are going to say, you know, I'm just getting on with it. So it's about taking that accountability. So knowing that you have to do something, because if only the menopause began and ended when you walked into the workplace, wouldn't that be amazing that it started at the door and you left it behind, you know? But for many women, I'm saying, whilst your organisation can do an awful lot of this stuff to help you as a duty of care, and of course they do have a duty of care, surely you have the biggest duty of care, because it's your body and it belongs to you. So here's a range of options. Pick one, but doing nothing shouldn't be one of them. And again, that's a big message from me, because it's all about action.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think as well, I think you said it at the beginning, Sharon, kind of education, you know, whether you want to call it education or just the, you know, enlightenment or just talking, whatever it is. And then I think also that it was really insightful what you said again right at the beginning around this is around cultural change. It's not just around policy, but that the, you know, the lady that had the incident of the, you know, the flooding on the chair, it is about that kind of stuff. It's just a natural thing that happens, and you know, and how do we as a workplace, but as a society, just kind of become okay with it, and it just be, you know, it's okay, and that woman absolutely shouldn't have left. So I think everything that we've talked about follows on from that, doesn't it? So yeah, really great presentations, and I definitely want to pick up on the theme around the GP, so that's come up quite a bit today, and it came up in the last session, and you never know, that might be the third event in this wonderful series.
Charlotte,
Yeah.
Hello, it's Mary, just to say
Mary!
sorry, I had problems earlier. Thank you so much for inviting us today. Hopefully we added a different perspective to the conversation. But as you can hear from Lisa, we've got quite a lot of good practice and tools. So by all means, I've popped my details in the toolkit. If anybody wants to get in touch outside of the event, please feel free to do so. I'm happy to share whatever we've learned on our journey, and we are still on a journey. So thank you so much, and really fantastic speakers today. So thanks.
Brilliant, thank you, Mary. Yeah, and big thank you to the police who've kind of supported us on this. It's just great, like I said, to look outwards and see what other organisations are doing. And please do pass on our thanks to Lisa as well for taking the time to do that video. And I'm sure people will take you up on the offer, Mary. They're a really, really friendly bunch at the police. So I would encourage anyone to get in touch. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you. We will send out by email all the email addresses that you've so Mary's, Sharon's and Jeanette's email addresses. We will send the toolkit out, and once we are able to, we'll also send the link to the recording of this session. Please feel free to share all of those as widely as possible. Like I said at the beginning of this session, we really want to talk and learn and collaborate, but we also want action. So please do share these. They're not exclusive. We just want to spread the word and the good work as far as we can. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.